Hi, welcome to E-Learning Unlocked. I'm Mariel.
Hi, I'm Julia.
And this is a podcast where we discuss trends, best practices in e-learning. It's really aimed at e-learning professionals, so anyone that works as an instructional designer or in the e-learning department. We hope these are useful tips and insights for you.
Yeah, we really want to make sure that you know all the different features that you can use with your e-learning platform and how you can use them in real case scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about myth busting around e-learning. So we're challenging if there is any substance to it.
Yeah, and we're going to divide it into 2 episodes. So this is the first one, and then we'll move on to the second part.
So you can already get ready for part 2 as well.
Yeah. So in the first part, we're busting 4 myths that people often have about e-learning and sharing how it can be just as effective or even better at times than traditional learning methods.
So let's get started. Let's get into it.
So the first myth that we're going to talk about is that e-learning is actually less effective than the traditional learning. So what shall we start?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting one. I think actually e-learning can be just as effective and in some cases, if not more, than traditional learning. I think this is really a concept that, feels a bit dated. I mean, I do know that e-learning was kind of looked at very differently and was still very different, 10, 15, even 5 years ago. I think nowadays it resonates really well with the learners just because they're online so much of their life. And it really has a huge amount of advantages as well, right? So self-paced learning, interactive elements, these kind of like online quizzes, these are all things that you cannot offer necessarily the same way.
Yeah, exactly. With the traditional learning, if you get to the point that you need to test yourself with a little quiz, even though you may think it's like a fun one, then you still get a bit stressed, with the environment that's around you. So with the e-learning, self-paced quizzes and learning in general could be really a huge advantage.
But yeah, what it really looks like is that e-learning actually tends to be more engaging, and as it also allows learners to learn on demand, there's no evidence at all to support that e-learning is less effective, and there's even some suggest that e-learning is more effective. So first myth busted. I think we can move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So then we go on to myth number 2. So this is really a myth that e-learning is impersonal and that it doesn't foster social interaction. So Julia, shall I leave it to you to dive in?
Yeah, definitely. So this one is a really interesting one because you can really imagine that the online learning may be a bit like a limitation in terms of social interactions, but also this kind of like lack of motivation from your peers. But I think this is far from being true. Just because you have a lot of different features that support this kind of social learning, and it actually activates learners even more because you can first of all communicate with your peers and not, in a traditional way, like you can write a message on the chat and the forum, and then you don't have to wait for a reply like, as you do with some workshops held on site. And at the same time, you also have this kind of like little gamification added here. So I think that there's a lot of added value in actually e-learning when it comes to social part.
Yeah, I think this is a great point because as you say, you can have those discussion forums, you can have the peer-to-peer collaborations, you can have the webinars, the Q&A. And I've seen it also with e-learning that I've done personally just for my personal growth and in my own time. It is, you often get either a community group or even sometimes a Facebook group, and you can connect with people all over the world who are excited about a certain topic. So I think it's actually really interesting. And I think the other thing to remember is that it's not binary, right? You don't need to put on 100% online course. You can always decide to have events around the world or a follow-up in person.
Yeah, you have
kind of things.
You have a lot of different ways of addressing the e-learning part because it's not only about taking the online course, right? You have
exactly
a lot of different events. And what I think is also regarding this kind of like social part was really important is that you may actually get a bit like more stress or like a bit pressure when you do the traditional learning with other people, while when you're hosting some stuff online, then you still are in your kind of safe space. You really can activate yourself during different group activities when you really feel that. while where you're with like your peers in one space that it may not be that comfortable to you, then you may be, let's say, a bit like taken back, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it does allow people that wouldn't be able to go on site perhaps to follow that e-learning, and then you can always have that virtual classroom or meetup as needed. I've also seen sometimes that depending on the type of e-learning it is, that you create the online platform and people actually that are close to each other even suggest to have a meetup to discuss the topic if they want to go deeper on a certain topic as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for your community to connect. So I think that's myth 2 busted. I think we can again move on, but I think it's really fun, this format today that we have, because there's a lot of these, let's say, common beliefs that sometimes have just been instilled since years into the community, and I think it's really important to look at them a little bit more closely.
Yeah.
So myth number 3, e-learning is only for tech savvy learners. What do you think about that, Julia?
I think this one is actually so far from truth, because e-learning can be super simple and super intuitive, while really keeping the user-friendly and open kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And as we just mentioned, it doesn't really have to be just about online courses. You don't have to be, super pro with your computer and like really get to know where to click or where to access something. You can just join a few different webinars, events to really have the e-learning part tackled.
No, definitely. And I think that's so true. I mean, it's also that if you need your learners to be extremely tech savvy, probably something is wrong either in the journey or in the interface. I mean,
That's true.
it can happen for sure, but then I think we need to just talk about optimizing that experience for the learners. I think if it's done right and if your user experience is put together nicely, then the whole concept is that it becomes really accessible, that it sort of relates to other programs that the users are already familiar with using, and it should be easy, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really good that you're mentioning that. And we actually have another podcast on a similar topic to really dive deeper into what Mario just mentioned. So what are the common mistakes made in e-learning? So you can then listen to this one. But yeah, indeed, as you mentioned, it's really important to remember that it shouldn't be actually designed for tech-savvy people. It should be like very open and user-friendly with easy-to-use interfaces.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I think that's myth number 3 busted, because people are so used to being on their mobile phones all the time. They're using a lot of apps, and, most people are already very tech-savvy, and also, if it needs to be more techie than that, then really we're doing something wrong. And of course, again, we always look at what kind of user do you have, what kind of learner do you have, what kind of generation are they from, and you can really adapt your e-learning each time to really suit them, right? I think that's really key.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's bring on myth number 4.
Yeah, so the myth number 4 is that e-learning is only about watching videos. So, Mario?
Yeah, it's again an interesting one. So it can definitely be like a popular misconception that it's just, e-learning is just about watching like endless videos. And I think that again just comes from people's personal experience. They've probably had an e-learning in the past where it was just like these videos that never seemed to end and they were forced to watch them all. So I totally see where it comes from. Like every myth always has some kind of source of truth where it came from at some stage. But I think it's really important to remember that e-learning evolved, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure, because some people may still connect the e-learning with boring, longish videos with no kind of fun conclusions in the end. But for sure, in the past few years, e-learning has evolved quite a lot. Yeah, so much. Yeah, for sure. So even just starting with interactive elements, interactive activities, going through even interactive videos that you can really connect with the activities, with the, things that you learn about. So it's not just a simple longish video, but you can really have a bit of video, a bit of podcast in the background, hear some like activities in between that really engage and make sure that you stay focused. So yeah, definitely it's a myth
Yeah, so as you said, totally agree. It's not just about passive watching. It's really nowadays it's active, it's engaging. There's so many formats, and it's also about the length, right? We're no longer putting up 40-minute videos in most cases. And if we are, then it's really because it makes sense for that format. So I think it's really just about adapting the format to the learner. And then they normally, hopefully, should not feel like it's just endless videos.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. But for sure, e-learning is about mixing up different ways how you can address the training content. So for sure, videos are super fun. Really a great format to transfer knowledge.
e-learning.
But in the end, if you really combine them with a few interactive activities here and there, with some like accordions or like flashcards and some additional like even, scenario-based learning elements, then you really have the best kind of output also for like different kind of audiences that you address, right? Because there might be some people that they don't necessarily like watching videos that much. They are not focused.
Yeah.
So if you mix it, then you're kind of addressing, let's say, all the layers.
Yeah, you mix them, you keep them short, when you can, for like really the micro nano learning. And you just build that journey. You just build the curve of, what do you want them to go through in the next 15, 20 minutes. And you can say, look, I'm going to sprinkle some videos, but then I'm going to do some questions. I'm going to do some summary slides, some introductions, some podcasts. You can really work out what kind of learning curve and learning journey would work well for your students. So I think you can really work with them. So that's myth number 4 busted. I think that's a wrap for right now. So please feel free to also watch our second episode where we bust another few myths. But I think it's just, it's just a light, fun format, but it's really just to quickly run through, some of these common misconceptions, because I think it is important. They're very much still sometimes alive today. People still think about these things. And so it's really good to look at what do we really need to be worrying about.
Yeah. That's true. And for sure, it may be also a fun way to tackle this e-learning topic, to really address the myths and how they actually apply. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for listening. Don't hesitate to subscribe to our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that it was useful. And please also feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions at all. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.